Hubbardston Planning Board. Planning board meetings are broadcast live and digitally recorded because that's now the state of the law and I don't have the citation in the document. So first on the agenda is public comments. Do we have anybody from the public for an item that is not on the agenda? Anything from anybody on the board that's not on the agenda? That's not for later. Alright, so moving down, minutes for acceptance, October 4th, those are still in process. As everyone's aware, we're currently going through some transition in the office. We'll come back to that later on tonight, but I'm hoping to have those minutes available soon. So moving into to new business, I want to take these in reverse order, and the first one being continued discussion of the Agricultural Advisory Committee recommendation for the Rural Enterprise Overlay. Now, we missed the last meeting, so just to catch everybody up, and for the benefit of the public, the Select Board, the Planning Board, the Planning Board and the Economic Development Committee recommended the formation of an Agricultural Advisory Committee that was tasked with exploring the creation of an agricultural accessory bylaw. And the reasoning behind that is that those bylaws tend to promote land being kept as open space, and it also promotes business of a type that generally polls very well with all of our constituents. So, so that recommendation was made to the Select Board. The Select Board then set up a committee. The committee then ran for, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years. There were a bunch of stakeholders on it. Many of those stakeholders were farm owners and owners of large open space parcels in the town. Last month, the committee voted and made a recommendation on a draft overlay, which we're calling the Rural Opportunity Overlay because it's not a true agricultural accessory bylaw. So now that they've made that recommendation to us, we need to figure out what the rest of this process is going to look like. So I'm going to propose to the board that we probably don't want to pull it right in to go to a public hearing. I think we want to work on it a little bit more because from the committee, we've heard the recommendation from essentially the stakeholders who are the business people and the landowners. We need to kind of pull in some of everybody else's viewpoints. So what I propose is that we should schedule a public listening session. So not a public hearing on the bylaw, but a public listening session. And at this session, I would present a slide deck, which pretty much is going to look just like the one from Rutland when they did their agricultural advisory bylaw, talking about why these laws are helpful to communities that want to preserve their agrarian history and feel, because it helps compensate people for keeping their land like that. Because if you give people the ability to make money off of open space, they're more likely to keep it as open space or as farmland. And then I'll walk through the reasoning from the committee on why we did what we did, present the draft, and we'll just take a whole bunch of comments from the public, and hopefully people who feel passionate about it show up on both sides. People that really love it, people that find problems with it that want to talk about it, because I really want to get a lot of that out in the process while we're drafting, instead of just taking a draft and putting it up for a public hearing. And then, or because people don't show up to the public hearing unless you make a really big deal about it, and I think we can make a bigger deal about the listening session. So I think we could work with the town administrator's office, probably have it over in the senior center, promote the heck out of it for, I don't know, a few weeks, and really get people engaged, because we want to really kind of knock the warts off this thing before we put out, because it is a pretty meaningful zoning change for the town.
I'm on a reverse 911 kick right now, so we can send a few of those out.
Yeah,
I
why not?
noticed that.
So I guess in terms, the question that we need to come up in terms of timeline is when works for the board and what do we think works for the town to schedule this public listening session, and then we can kind of work back from there, because we have plenty of time to get onto the Springtown meeting at this point, although it goes by way faster than I think we always appreciate in November. It's always like, oh wow, it's March, this is due next week.
Yeah.
So theoretically we have time, but we have to still move with deliberate haste on it. So I guess to start the conversation, do we think that something like that could happen in early December and have people show up to it, or are people
That's what
too
I'm-
checked out because of the holidays?
That's what I'm worried about. If we
Yeah.
try to do this in Thanksgiving and Christmas, I don't think you're gonna get the public's input.
So
Unless you did it the first week in December, I mean, early December, cause like, once you get past that, it's the holidays.
yeah. Well, I think we'd be looking at either the first week of December, or else we'd be looking at the second week of January.
I think doing it in December makes sense, and the main reason is because, if there are comments that require you to make changes, once those changes are in, they'll have to go through another public hearing. And I think that's when you start bumping against calendar schedule issues. And in my opinion, you ought to at least make sure that you get an initial feedback based on the information that you already have, and see what kind of response you receive.
So what's the rest of what's thoughts on trying to do like
December.
first week of December?
Yeah, first
If you
week.
did anything past that, I don't think you'll get anyone to show up. So it would be December 6th would be Wednesday then.
What do you think, Mr. Town Administrator?
We could do that. We could advertise the heck out of that for like a couple weeks and we'll be fine.
So, and I'll put together some of the materials ahead of time and at least put together an agenda for the night. Not like a formal,
Yeah.
well, it's gonna be a formal agenda for us, because it'll certainly count as a meeting for us, it'll probably count as a meeting for the EDC. I don't know if how the select board's gonna fall in, they're probably gonna wanna be there for at least two of the members, although Heather's not gonna be doing anything, so.
Nope.
At least one of the members will definitely be interested in being there for it. So Wednesday, December 6th. So then,
I'm uncertain if, because this would not go in front of the select board after, yes it would.
yeah, it would go in front of the select board after, because to go
Should
through
go
the
on
check
town
sheet,
meeting,
we
yeah.
have to give it to the select board, and the select board has to give it to us, and then we have to publish it for a public hearing and do all of those steps, so this I would call what came out of our work based upon the public listening session to be essentially a final copy of it, but from a legal standpoint, it's a draft until it gets through the
I'm
public hearing.
assuming we'll want a public meeting of the planning board, the economic development committee, agricultural commission, and the select board.
Well, I told those people that we're never meeting again, and thank you for your service.
Yeah.
They all seem pretty happy about it, but they also
No,
all.
the actual ag commission.
Oh, yes,
Not
the advisory committee,
advisory
sorry.
subcommittee.
The advisory subcommittee, those folks are still committed to supporting this through, so even though it's not a formal, town position anymore, they're all still very interested. Cause like I said, most of them all are farm properties, so they all have skin in the game on this, so, it's a way for people to care. Alright, so that is a pretty big deal off the agenda, so, now, really, this comes under, matters not anticipated by chair or administrative matters. I received notice today from an attorney working with Verizon that they expect to be presenting a special permit imminently with us. And the reason this is for the Vertex Tower. And the reason this matters is because there is a thing, the Spectrum rules, which is kind of the co-location equivalent of the Telephone Communications Act. And the Spectrum rules put crazy timelines on what we have. So, under the Spectrum rules, when somebody's co-locating equipment, we have 10 days to accept the application and determine if it's complete. Ordinarily, we have a lot more time than that, and it tolls the clock. So if we don't accept or reject within 10 days, we lose our ability to do so. And then the whole application is granted in 60 days. If we're not able to, hold meetings, or we're not able to come to a conclusion or anything. So generally, I think most of the public is gonna be pretty supportive of it, especially now that we already have towers permitted for construction. It makes sense to put equipment on them, that's the reason you do it. So, we have to figure out how to make this work with what our bylaws currently are, because the special permit process that we have isn't compatible with this rule. And the reason I bring this up, and I'll go right back to you, Francois.
Yep.
The reason that this got triggered in my mind when we were talking about scheduling on the 6th is we might end up in a position where we need to do meetings out of schedule, or we need to push meetings together in order to comply with the deadlines, because it's generally a bad look on us for anything to be granted by default. So I would prefer us not get defaulted on anything, so I'm bringing that up now to throw out that, yeah, especially if we advertise it to the 6th, that's gonna become a pretty unmovable date. If we're going out to the public and we're doing reverse 911 calls and really publicizing that. But our other meetings around that might need to be flexible in order for us to comply with federal law if this application comes in within the next day or two. So, Francois?
Are there any stipulations regarding the shot clock and when this starts, given the fact that at least it does not appear to me that there's anything built or is being built as of this time?
So,
Do we have any wording that we can use as a guide? Because I think, you know, putting a co-located equipment, which makes logical sense, but the construction has not even started or even completed, and us understanding, is the final product really going to be compliant with what we have not only provided as the stipulations, but more importantly, is there anything that we need to keep in mind or any considerations based on the final product of what Vertex is putting up there as a tower that needs to be accounted for or taken into consideration?
So that actually kind of cuts to the quick of the spectrum requirements. So I've only been starting to read the spectrum requirements because it's never come up to us before. But the way I've read them so far is that if the co-located equipment does not change the dimensions of the project, then the expedited shot clock applies. So like if they were coming in and the equipment was gonna be outside of the footprint, so like where I think this is potentially going to turn into a live issue, so I'm not gonna comment on what I think it means, I'm just gonna talk about the live issue, is like when you look at the commercially planned projects, like they design the tower essentially for co-located equipment to go on it. They designed the pad site for co-located equipment to go on it, because the fenced off corral, which is part of the project dimensions, was built with the idea of that stuff going in there. However, you look at something in Patterson like the municipal tower, and like, is the fenced off area big enough? Like, maybe spectrum does apply there, maybe it doesn't apply there, but it's those kinds of factual considerations that go in to determine whether or not the spectrum rules do. And if they do, man, it really puts a gun to our head, because it says that we can't deny it. And in a bunch of different ways, we lose our ability to deny it, and the shot clock becomes really short. So like the way our bylaw is currently written, the wireless communications overlay zone, you essentially have to go through all of the steps of a regular special permit for co-located equipment. But if the Spectrum Act applies, then a whole lot of that can be waived and all those timelines go right out the window. So it really changes the game quite a bit for us, and it's one of the reasons that we've been talking about in the other conversation, the DLTA conversation, about how we really need to modernize our wireless bylaw.
Yes.
And that it's not just the lattice tower, it's not just the monopole issue, it's not just balloon test, like there's these real practical issues that are gonna make our lives very difficult when, we don't have clearly defined process, we don't have clearly defined bylaws, so how do we tell the people in the office how to handle these things? And if the people in the office can't handle it, then, well, I was pretty close to my wit's end last summer, maybe we could get there this winter. So the people in the office need to be able to handle this, it has to work out that way. So, yeah, that's a long way to answer that question with another question, but you're getting to the point of it with it. Anything else on that? And I guess we're still on, well, we're on that little bit of a tangent at the moment under matters not reasonably anticipated, but, anything else on the ag accessory? Alright, so we'll move down the agenda, and next on the agenda is talking about the DLTA projects. And I know this is a little challenging, because we kinda lost momentum on it, so, well, I guess I'll ask the board on this. Do we wanna go through and start talking about trying to weight what we think is the most important here tonight? Or do we want to table this for our next meeting and give people a little more time to think about it before we start to put, priorities to them?
From my perspective, if the DLT application came out tomorrow, it seems that streamlining the special permit process and the telecommunications bylaws would be the top of the priority list, but I would also appreciate a longer list to ensure that if any other funding opportunities were to come up, there's a kind of a laundry list of things we would like to do, but really don't have the time or bandwidth for right now.
Well, I think that's reasonable. I think we should have some guidance that we're giving to the town administrator on this, because it is important for kind of setting direction of the town. So, I guess even if we don't go through the whole list and prioritize it, we probably should just pick our top 3 out of it and then come back to the rest of the list. So just to run down the whole list to refresh everybody's recollection.
Can I ask for a favor, please?
Yep.
I know that we don't have a folder for this meeting. I'm assuming then that the information that you have for the DLTA is still in prior meetings folder? Is that a fair?
It should be. Let me drop in the most current
Oh,
version.
we don't even have a folder for this, for November the 1st, that's why I'm asking. the
Yeah,
question.
let me drop it in for the last meeting, just to make
Thank
sure
you.
everybody has it handy.
You're gonna drop it in on the 19th,
Yeah.
and I'll put it up on the TV.
Alright. You mind being the scrivener on this for this copy, since that way we can just have one person working on the official copy in there.
Yep.
Alright, so just to run down the list, so to refresh everybody's recollection, modernize special permit and site plan review process. Project large-scale solar photovoltaic revision. Revise, update subdivision rules. Revise, update marijuana bylaw. Revise, update, modernize wireless communication bylaw. Review and revise commercial zoning. Review and revise uses for all zoning. Battery energy storage bylaw, if current one is rejected by Attorney General. And review of aquifer protection bylaw. So, I think what Nate's saying is pretty reasonable if we wanna try to put an order on these, at least the first few. I think my top three would be, and that's what I think we should do, we should just go around the room and get everybody's top three, cause I think they're gonna mostly agree anyways. So, review, or rather update, modernize, special permit, site plan process is one of my top three. The wireless communications bylaw is in my top three, and the marijuana bylaw is in my top three, for reasons we'll talk about later on tonight. Oh, and I guess because it's gonna come up under matters not reasonably anticipated by chair, the thing that's driving that is we need to remember that those special permits are coming up for renewal, nowish, so,
For both marijuana grow sites.
Yep, it's been almost 3 years already,
Yeah.
so, that's another reason to keep that one closer to the top of the list to modernize our process. So that's my top three.
I think I would choose the same. I think my fourth would probably be the rezone for commercial uses, but I think I have the same top three as you.
Going around the room, how about everybody else?
Same.
I agree with John as well. Number 4, I was thinking about number 3, commercial going in top 3, but I think it belongs in number 4.
Yeah, if I was
We
adding.
can give them a list of 4 if we want, we don't have to
Yeah.
hold it off at 3, right?
If I was adding a 4, I would do that. I also think that we would do, and the reason it doesn't make the top 3 for me is I think we could actually do a lot of that on our own, and we don't need DLTA assistance.
That's
for it.
fair. Well, that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause it's easy.
We've got the list halfway knocked down already.
So,
Unless,
Francois?
The special permit and the site plan process. Second one for me is the marijuana bylaw. The next one would be the large-scale solar photovoltaic revision. And it's pretty much equal to the wireless, I'd say actually the wireless communication probably bylaw is higher priority, and then afterwards the solar.
So the solar would be your number 4?
That would be my number 4.
Okay.
Thus becoming number 5 on the list because it's the only other option.
Yeah.
Best at this point in time, I would put completely on the bottom, based on the fact that we don't have anything until December. We'll need to react to it at that point in time, plus we don't have any projects right now that are pending there.
Well, I'm happy with having that be the current list, and I think we can spend more time looking at this, talking about the specific goals and the deliverables, but I think it's important for us to kinda walk away from tonight with the top ones
Yeah.
to focus on.
I knew what our
Can
plan
I-
was for this upcoming session anyway.
Can I ask, I mean, I was under the impression there are potentially 2 solar applications coming in.
Yep, we're gonna come back to that under matters not reasonably anticipated by chair.
Well, I'm asking you to maybe enlighten us, because that might influence people's way of thinking about solar, given the
Yeah, sure.
fact of what we've had in the
They
past
actually had
issue.
reached out to me,
Yeah.
so.
So there hasn't been much, let me tell you exactly what I sent to Chris last week. Give me 1 second. I see how it is. Mark's been gone for 15 minutes and you guys threw aquifers all the way to the bottom. I'm joking.
I think everything that's on the list is pretty meaningful and impactful, but the top few kind of rise up to active fire level to me.
Yeah, especially if we're now gonna have a whole bunch of those carriers trying to apply for permits on these towers, and we keep gonna have 10 days every single time. We need to get that fixed quick,
Yeah, absolutely.
because there's now 3 towers that could potentially be applying for carrier permits.
Yeah, and three to 4 co-locations per
Per
tower.
tower, exactly, so that has gotta get up there.
Yeah, no, we've Well, we've certainly been in a quiet period since the summer, but looking at the writing on the wall and what some of the inquiries have been in, we're possibly heading for a very busy time, so.
So long and short here, a gentleman reached out, he's interested, he didn't specify what company he was from. He's interested in putting a approximately 5 megawatt each solar array at 7 Amber Lane and 27 Halfree Lane Road, whatever that is. He's anticipating the Amber Lane one will come in first.
They're
I
on,
don't even know where Amber Lane is.
Amber Lane is a small cul-de-sac off of Halfree Road,
Okay,
it's the eastern side of town.
almost in Rutland.
okay.
And this was on 10/18, and I haven't heard from him since.
South of here, then, off 68.
Yep.
Are there any others, or just these?
Just those two.
And they're from the same person
Yep.
on pretty much the same
Area.
general geographic location?
Mm-hmm. The minute we know more, you will too.
Yep. So, I guess to close out the agenda item
Interesting.
that we're on.
I never thought that there was three-phase electricity on that Halfree Road.
Yeah.
There is none? That's why I'm kind of like suspicious on this here. The reason is most, not all, solar facilities typically are on a stretch of road that has three-phase electricity.
I'm not sure if 68 has,
68 does, but
well, I'd say
Half-
this is less than a mile from Halfree, so they have to run it.
Exactly, and that's a huge cost typically, but anyway, neither here nor there, but that's, I mean, for us right now, that's, okay.
So I'm happy temporarily closing the DLTA discussion from there. I don't think we need to go any deeper into it than just coming up with those top items for the moment. We do need to go deeper into it, just not tonight, unless anybody has anything else they really wanna add to it.
Nope.
Alright, so moving down to administrative matters and matters not reasonably anticipated by chair, let's take both of these together. We already talked about most of the issues. I did also just get an update from Candace, our town clerk. She's been doing, she's been chasing the Attorney General's office around on all of the pending bylaws and trying to clean up any of the issues that they found with them. We're getting closer, but the Attorney General's office did extend out the time that they have to respond to them, which apparently they can do unilaterally. So we're now within their new window of time to respond, but Kansas has a couple discrete issues that she's been working on that she believes have been solved, and for the most part it was issues related to procedure and how they were handled at town meeting, specifically about how the vote was recorded and how the publication was done and stuff like that. It hasn't been substantive issues related to the content of the bylaws. It's been to the process that was used to put them forth and record them. So we gotta see what we get, but that's positive that appears to be what the questions are, because in the ones where, in the past where they've come back and they've said no, the questions off the bat were immediately substantive. Like, why do you think this setback works? Why do you think this acreage limit is necessary for a marijuana grow? Like, all of that stuff. Those were the questions they started with, not how is the vote recorded at town meeting. So, we're working through those issues, and if we can't get through them, we can ratify at the Springtown meeting. So hopefully it doesn't come to that. But the ones that are particularly important to me, which are the recodification of our zoning bylaw and updating it to match what everybody thought it was. Those appear to be in good shape, and we appear to have responded to the questions that the Attorney General has. They just haven't responded back to us, but we've answered them in ways that should be satisfactory, so not worried about that one. It was, the best one is the one that still has some of the more challenging procedural issues for getting through. And I don't have the details on the issues, and Nate, I don't know if you can talk about them, but there were, I know on that one it was an issue related to how the vote was called, because the specific number, so.
There wasn't a specific number, but it wasn't called unanimous. It's getting very picky at this point, and Candace is working with several members of the Attorney General's staff. She was at a meeting the other day updating Francois, and she had noted that it is cumbersome to deal with the number of people she's dealing with, but she's working on it without kind of downing anybody. For a little while, we did not have a person in that role that with the adequate skill set to look into this, so that may have slowed that down for a little bit, but Candace is a professional town clerk who is doing her best to look into it. We hope to hear something in December, if not late November.
There was the additional challenge that that particular meeting took place at the school itself not in the gym, but in the other area.
Cafeteria.
In the cafeteria area, and I believe that at that point in time, it was not as illuminated, obviously, as the gym is.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I was there, and a lot of us were there, if I recall correctly, from what I at least had from a perception. Yes, to your point, I think it was not called as unanimous,
Yeah.
but there was no actual hands go up during the time when the nay votes were actually, called out, so, yes, go ahead.
Are the town meetings recorded
They-
digitally?
They are, the problem, however, is.
Is that a resource?
that, I don't know, again, because from a logistics perspective, this was in a very different setting. Again, it was at the cafeteria.
No, that meeting was recorded.
I-
was
yes,
in
I
there,
agree.
that was on the FinCom at that point, and there
I
was a
agree.
lot of schools committee business going on at that time.
I do agree with you.
remember the video team was to my right,
Yeah.
from the head table.
There are a number of variables that could have caused you to not be able to see all the people in that room.
Yeah.
The cafeteria table setup was a lot more spread out than,
Exactly.
say, the
I see.
rows of
And the
table and
illumination was
chairs
just not
and-
there in comparison to the illumination that you have in the gym, which is like very bright.
Oh,
Uh,
jeez.
that was the issue.
The
Okay.
moderator is aware of the issue and has already corrected it and understands that he needs to call the votes by numbers or unanimous or so.
Explicitly.
Explicitly, and he's a quite civic-minded individual, so I'm sure he'll be fine.
And I have every faith in Kansas that she's doing everything she can at this point to try to get it through, so there's not much more that we can do as a board on it. We just kinda have to let her work through the process and deal with all the hoops the Attorney General has.
To be a fly on the wall in the Attorney General's office would be nice, cause do I think there might be a little more to this? Maybe, but from my seat, I can't take a guess at what that may be.
Alright, so, let me just double check what else came in for email today to see what else was on this. Also just coming in, this fall, there's a series of citizen, planner cooperative meetings. I'll make sure the information on that gets out to everybody. We do have some funding available where we may be able to reimburse for some of these trainings if somebody felt like that was a barrier preventing them from getting the training, but I've been to a few of the citizen planner training sessions, and they've been excellent, just really, really good. I can't recommend them enough, and at $35, they're a pretty good deal. They also have some pretty good free information online too.
Mr. Chairman, may I give a lackluster update on the land use clerk?
Yes, please.
So as you may have seen, we've had the land use clerk position posted for about a month now. We haven't received significant interest or really anyone that rang the bell on getting an interview and to be moved through the process. So I began speaking with the town of Rutland about sharing their planner. So that took us off of the kind of trail for seeking a land use clerk for some time. But just 2 days ago, I was informed by the Rutland Town Administrator that their new planner is not interested in doing that at this time, and he is brand new to the role, so the TA didn't want to force him into doing anything that may have been too cumbersome or push him too far too fast. So now we're back where we were, noting that we don't have a lot of many applicants. I am beginning with Chris to look at if there would be any way to move around some of the clerk roles to better fit incumbent skill sets and our needs / wants. So that's something I'm working on. I will keep him in the loop. If we were to do that, it would likely be in some sort of 30, 60, or 90-day trial period before going and getting the formal okay from the select board, just to make sure that everyone was happy, understanding. But one thing that I've been speaking with Chris and a few others about, we were very, very fortunate to get Mark for the year that we had him. And he was more educated and experienced than the position, title, pay structure, and we can afford should and will be. So I think the best route for this is for us, partnership between my office and you guys, to create update all the forms, create a standard operating procedure for everything that happens, so that whomever is in this office is just following a list. Like, oh, someone turned in a special permit, it triggered A, B, C, D, and that I think we can get someone to do. If we're anticipating someone to have land use and community development knowledge right off the bat, we're just setting ourselves up for failure. So that's where we are with that. It's not a great update, but we're still looking. If anyone knows anybody who would be interested in applying, it's about 19 hours per week in the range of $25,000 for a whole year. So it's a decent part-time job. Any questions?
Does the idea of going to Rutland was intriguing. Might there be other towns that we abut that might have some potential to share? Can we look into Barry? or
Barry, I don't believe,
Westminster?
has a planner. Westminster, I spoke with her, she's having planner problems herself, so they ended up taking someone that wasn't necessarily as qualified as they want, giving them a downgraded role and a downgraded pay, and they're going to train them. So I don't know if that would be someone that would necessarily have the bandwidth to take on another town. And
Templeton,
I'm-
Princeton, I'm
Yeah,
just reaching.
It's certainly a challenge. At the MRPC commission meetings, one of the recent topics of discussion was how MRPC had to just rescore their positions and bump up the pay pretty significantly, because even a junior planner, somebody who's fresh out of school, is getting 80,000. So trying to hire anybody for anything that actually has planning in the title has become even with MRPC's increased, pay schedules, they're still working pretty hard to pick people up. So,
I also don't wanna see us become a second tier priority to anyone.
Appreciate that.
alright, so there's a lot of messages that came in today, I'm just making sure we covered all of them, I'm pretty sure we did under the not reasonably anticipated. Yeah, we did, so, anybody else on the board have anything to bring up? Nate?
Nope.
Members of the public? Alright, so, I guess I had one more item, there was a question 2 meetings ago, about the ledger for the planning board, I put it in the documents for the previous meeting. I didn't put it on the agenda yet, because I need to spend more time with it to really understand it before we do that. But that is gonna be on an agenda for an upcoming meeting. So, I did wanna let everybody know that, we are following up on that so that we all can understand what went on. And for the members of the public, not that we think any kind of nefarious thing went on, it's just, we've had so much institutional knowledge turn over in the last few years. We're all just trying to understand what was done and how it works and what are gonna be the best practices going forward. That's where we're at with it, it's not like we're doing an investigation, we're just trying to investigate the process. So, anything else?
I have a question regarding the renewal of the special permits for the 2 marijuana facilities. Do we have an exact date when that has to be done by? I personally have never gone through a renewal process, and so I'm trying to understand.
Word renewal isn't in the bylaws.
Yeah, that's kind of the problem.
Well, that's just the point, that's the point I'm trying to do. That's why I'm asking for the date, right?
Yeah.
If the date is soon, we need to figure out a way in which we're gonna have this done. Because they're gonna come back and say, well, and what happens, more importantly, what happens if we go past that date and we do not have a special permit? Can they truly operate? Can they not operate? I mean, I understand that probably typically this time of the year, there's very little activity happening at least the outside growing facility. There may be some things that are being done in the insides, but they still have to comply with the special permits. Does it put a stop on everything? I mean, I think there's some important questions that we need to at least understand, and it's all pretty much date driven right now.
Mhm. Yeah, well, this just came up today as an issue, so where Nate's put on his action item list to, at the very least, start making sure we even have the forms and the documents to do
Yeah.
this. And we'll look into the dates. I also raised this as an issue with our consultant, so that he's aware that this is something that we're gonna need support on. And we'll talk to him about it too, because he's been around long enough where I'm sure he's done them. There hasn't been one since I've been on the board, so I don't think any of us.
None of us have gone through this here.
Maybe Bill has, but.
No, because when he was elected, I was part of the
Okay.
board as an alternate, and I do not recall seeing anything.
Yeah, so none of us have gone through a renewal, so we're gonna have to figure that out and document that process, so.
And so I'm gonna get to a date right now.
I believe Bowie's paper crane was before the Damon's facility came up.
Yeah, but according to them, it was right within the same window, so.
Yeah, it was pretty close, cause it was early in COVID, because when I joined just in time for having like the last in-person meeting before we went virtual for a while. And these permits ended up being done almost entirely in Zoom.
I think one of the important things for us to capture prior to the special permit is to talk to the other boards that are involved and collect any information we can receive from them. So we also need to give them enough time to potentially respond to questions regarding the issues and or items that have been brought up on their respective boards, as well as any departments, and with that I mean like the police department, fire, obviously, building, inspector, et cetera.
Yeah, we certainly need to spend time investigating, because I couldn't even tell you what the legal standard is for renewing or not renewing a special permit at this point. And I know there's a good deal of case law on it, but this is just, I was only made aware of this issue a couple hours ago,
Yeah.
so I haven't done any of the homework yet.
I'm also uncertain how the new legislation and guidance will affect the special permit process for this, but the finalized version of said legislation is going to be put out on November 9th. So,
For vote or
no,
for
it's
consideration?
voted on. It's being put out there for all to see and to be the law of the land.
So it was voted already?
Yeah, on September 27th.
So the wording is out, and we could actually review the wording,
The formal and final wording will be out
On
on
November.
November 9th.
so within a week,
Yep.
okay? I
And
think that will be critical for us to know.
Yes, I had a conversation with Bowie and Lisa today, and the conversation was that there has been a standard operating procedure implemented and voted upon for the Board of Health. So in the future, when there is or could be a scent issue, they will be made aware, because one of their major complaints was, hey, we didn't even know until it was too late and people were mad. And that was justified in being fair. They also spoke with me about how they want to work with the town. They want to pay any community impact fees that are going to be considered fair. That Paper Crane, as a social equity company, is going to end up having to pay 1%. I believe the other company may end up getting off scotch-free, but at the very least, from Paper Crane, we're gonna get 1% of their revenue, and then a matching 1% from the state if that followed through
Is
into.
that gross revenue,
Yeah.
or is that, and that's a question I think
Yeah.
we've
We
been
talked about it.
asking
It was
about the
gross,
ST,
yeah.
you know, the structural deficit anyway.
I believe it
Working
is
group.
gross revenue, and
Sorry,
the-
gross revenue.
Yeah, and they are working right now, their internal accountant didn't prove to be as successful as they hoped, so they are now working with a Boston CPA firm, and they told me that they hope to get me their numbers within the next 3 to 4 weeks. They would like to see us kick off the special permit within special permit renewal process on all of their special permits within a month or two. So we do have to get moving, and I'm hoping to have a letter or an email drafted to you guys talking about what we're hoping to do within the next couple days.
Okay, that'd be great, and I think this is certainly something that I would like to put as part of the agenda for our next meeting. Make sure that we are structuring we have a structure for how the special permit renewal process not only has to go through, but what information we as a board will require from other boards, from other departments, as well as from Paper Crane, or from, and I remember Boys, I'm sorry, not Boys, but
Royal Sun.
Royal Sun. I was thinking Royal Caribbean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the Royal Sun's, that entity in terms of what we will be requesting and requiring from them.
At this point, I can only speak to what I spoke to Paper Crane about and Black and White administrative.
And that's good, I mean,
So I
I'm
haven't
saying that
talked
from
to
our
Royal Sun,
perspective, we
yeah.
need to get our ducks
Yeah.
lined up, and I'd
Oh.
like to have an agenda item, and I'm asking, Mr. Chair, that we please include that as a
Yep.
formal item,
'Cause
and
for a
as part of our
variety-
next meeting.
For a variety of reasons, standard operating procedures and updating our forms is going to be incredibly important over the next couple months.
Agreed?
Well, anything else?
You are all invited to a volunteer appreciation event on November 20th at, I believe, 6 p.m. Invitations will be coming out
Where is that taking?
in the Senior Center.
Oh, wonderful. Okay.
Turkey sandwiches.
Cheese platter, carrots, like,
I did throw a document in for the last meeting. It didn't go with any agenda item, but it's a report from Norwatic Network. They hired an economic consulting firm to go in and do an economic study on the value of the Massachusetts Central Rail Trail to the communities it touches. And the reason this is relevant is because the Ware River Rail Trail, although it's in a state of disrepair, runs through Hubbardston. And although the connections are in a state of disrepair, it should connect to the Massachusetts Central Rail Trail. And trails that connect are beloved children when it comes to grant money. So if we were to end up in a position where we were able to say, well, our rail trail connects to the Mass Central Rail Trail, it opens up a whole new world of grant money for us, for trails, for infrastructure, for all kinds of things. Because interconnection is the new name of the game for greenways.
Okay. Do we have somewhere a map of where the trails in question are in Hubbardston?
Open Space is about to come up with an updated one.
Okay.
So Open Space is actually redoing their open space master plan, and they did a brief interview of me as a stakeholder, as a representative of the planning board, and EDC, and as someone who lives in the eastern part of the town, so kind of all of those hats.
Mhm.
So I talked to them about the stuff that we're working on, like the rural opportunity overlay, and how some of the stuff that they're working on, like this rail trail interconnectivity, how it all kind of works together. Because in communities where these things are built and where there is connectivity, they do drive economic growth and they do drive an increase in property values. Like just ask the town of Hudson. Like the changeover in the town of Hudson was ultimately driven by adding a few more liquor licenses and having a rail trail. Like, my office was located in Hudson when all this was going on, and I was a member of the business association, and that really is what did it. The select board stuck their neck out and took a whole lot of heat for the extra liquor licenses that they were adding, but it was remarkable what it did to the town from an economic development standpoint. But yeah, it's worth reading, cause it talks about those economic impacts, and we can always throw it on the website with the materials to share with the public. It's huge, maybe we just throw a link. I'll put a link in the next agenda to make it easy for everybody. But other than that, that's everything we had for this meeting, everything we had for last meeting, and everything that came in today. There was a lot of it today, so if nobody has anything else and nothing new from the public, then can we get a motion?
I will make a motion that we adjourn.
How about a second?
I second that motion.
Here in a first and a second, non-debatable, calling a vote,
Steiger, aye?
Denalia, aye.
Dak, aye.
and the chair is aye. We are adjourned
Thank you
at